Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson. Tonight, the president has decided that the Republican Congress, during its final weeks in office, should fund a wall along our southern border with Mexico. That's not a new idea, obviously. Trump ran for office beginning 3 years ago on that very promise. Voters agreed with it. They elected him. Now he's demanding unequivocally that the wall finally get built. Now, at the same time, and this is not a coincidence, the American news media has identified the single most racist idea that anyone in the history of this country has ever come up with, and that is, of course, building a wall along our southern border with Mexico. Watch.
The president went to the heart of what I call his brown menace theory. These migrants, they're dirty people. They bring disease.
This border wall thing is about controlling the browning of America.
Donald Trump is fixated on the southern border, as he was the day that he announced this campaign. It is not about securing the borders. It is about xenophobic, racist, bigoted beliefs.
Well, so that couldn't be clear. Border walls are racist. We know that. Unlike border fences are not racist. They're much easier to climb over. And that's why Democrats have repeatedly voted to fund them. You could have lots of border fences and still wind up with 22 million illegal aliens living in your country. We have proved that conclusively over the years. Fences are the perfect solution if you're trying to pretend that you care about border security while simultaneously encouraging much of the third world to move here without permission. Fences are awesome for that. Yay, fences. But walls, well, as Nancy Pelosi has explained, walls are immoral. According to CNN, in fact, walls are nothing less than an attack on the human heart. Listen and learn.
And a wall won't solve it. All that he's doing is putting up walls around people's hearts.
And we are not a wall away from being better.
Don't waste billions of dollars of taxpayer money in order to build something that will not make our border more secure.
Yeah, and that's the other point they keep making. Walls don't work. They're totally ineffective, except in prisons and the Vatican, and outside Barack Obama's house here in Washington, and in almost every upper-income neighborhood in America, where walls surround the front lawns of the homes where Hillary Clinton and Beto O'Rourke hold their fundraisers. But along international borders, walls are useless. A border wall would simply create a thriving new market in taller ladders. Jeb Bush used to say that all the time. Everyone in power agrees with him. They're nodding vigorously from their gated communities.
We need border security. The wall is a part of border security. You can't have very good border security without the wall.
That's absolutely not true.
Just
that is a political promise. Border security is a way to effectively honor our responsibility.
And the experts say you can do border security without a wall, which is wasteful and doesn't solve the problem.
It's wasteful. Walls won't solve the problem. All the experts agree on that. And they have briefed Chuck Schumer, and he's passing on the news to us. Okay, but before we accept Chuck Schumer's claim about walls as fact, just one simple question. What about Israel? Israel is our closest ally in the Middle East. It is the recipient of our largest foreign aid package by far. Pretty much everybody in Congress on both sides supports Israel, or claims to. Many of them are vocal about that support, including Chuck Schumer. And yet, here's the funny thing. Israel has plenty of walls, and not just the famous one that people pray at. Israel has border walls, some of them tall and foreboding and made of steel. Are Israel's walls immoral? Well, by Nancy Pelosi's standards, why wouldn't they be immoral? It's a pretty obvious question, so we've asked it repeatedly of Democrats on this show. And every single time we get the very same answer to the question. Israel's walls have nothing to do with immigration. They're defensive walls. They're designed to keep out terrorists and suicide bombers. There is no comparison to Israel's wall and anything that Donald Trump is proposing. It's apples and oranges. Well, it's a pretty effective talking point, and that's why every Democrat repeats it every time. But is it actually true? We got curious and decided to find out ourselves from a knowledgeable source in Israel. A short time ago, we spoke to David Rubin. He's the former mayor of Shiloh, Israel. He's the author of the book Trump and the Jews. We had a fascinating conversation. Listen. Mr. Rubin, thank you very much for joining us. There's a debate in the United States, as you're fully aware, over whether to erect a wall on our southern border to solve what is an immigration crisis. Israel has relevant experience with this exact topic. Will you explain what Israel did in response to its immigration crisis and the effect that the wall had on it?
Well, we certainly do have that experience, Tucker. Between 2010 and 2012, there were 55,000 illegal immigrants into Israel. Now, you have to understand, Israel is a tiny country, so 55,000 illegal immigrants in just a couple of years is a lot of illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
And most of them settled in southern Tel Aviv, which was already a working class or a little bit rundown area. The rapes and murders in southern Tel Aviv skyrocketed in those few years. The Israeli government, under pressure from the grassroots mainly, grassroots protests from the residents of South Tel Aviv and other towns that were being overrun by these illegal immigrants, the Israeli government made a decision that they were going to build a wall, a high-tech steel wall on the southern border, the border between Egypt and Israel. So it was built over the next few years. It was completed, almost completed by 2015. In 2016, the wall was up. 2016, there were 11 illegal immigrants who entered Israel. And then they raised the height of the wall an additional several feet. And in 2017, there was not one illegal immigrant that made it through the southern border into Israel. So
that is a remarkable story.
It works.
So was there
it's a story that's...
So I'm just wondering the political part of this. So the 55,000 illegal immigrants you're describing were from Africa, as I remember, Eritrea, Sudan, parts of Africa.
Correct.
Was there anybody in Israel who said you're racist for trying to keep them out?
Well, there was some of that, yes. Some of the people on the left were going crazy and having protests, and they were complaining that it's a racist thing. But look, illegal immigration is illegal immigration. And I don't know if you know this, Tucker. I was born and raised in the United States. I've been living in Israel for 27 years. But the Jewish immigrants who came to America, and I wrote about this extensively in my book, Trump and the Jews, they came to America as legal immigrants. They came only to work hard and only to be full Americans. That was their goal. And so, I've heard people like Ocasio-Cortez from New York, the congresswoman, talking about how the immigrants, the migrants are just like the asylum seekers, the Jewish immigrants who are seeking to escape the Nazis in World War II. It's an obscene comparison, and I've heard it too many times from the left. So, yes, there was some in the Israeli left who were complaining and who were even accusing the Israeli government of racism. But the fact is that now nobody's complaining. Everyone is happy that we don't have illegal immigration to Israel.
That's an amazing story. And I hope that a lot of people watch this segment. Mr. Rubin, thank you for telling us what happened and your experience there. It's remarkable.
You're welcome, Tucker. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Jason Nichols is a professor of African American Studies at the University of Maryland and a frequent guest on the show, we are proud to say. Professor, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, Tucker.
So you just heard that kind of amazing story. I didn't know that. Tel Aviv, 55,000 illegal immigrants living there. The working class residents of the town said crime is going up. We're against this. Government of Israel builds a southern border wall, not to keep terrorists out, but to keep illegal aliens out. Mm-hmm. And no one in this country says anything. Is that immoral?
So I think there are lots of big differences between Israel and the United States. First of all, we know that crime has gone down in the United States steadily since 1991. Immigrants both legal and undocumented, commit fewer crimes than Americans like you and I.
I don't know. I don't think that number is true. But leaving that aside,
but that's absolute.
I don't believe it is actually. I think immigrants in the country commit crimes at a higher proportion.
No,
legal.
that's
okay.
We can look that up.
Separate debate. Okay, I'll even grant you that you're right in that. But why is it? And by the way, I just want to be totally clear. I support Israel's right to protect its own borders. It's a country. It gets to do that if it wants. But why is it immoral when we do it here, according to the Democratic Party, but not immoral when our closest ally in the region does it?
Well, again, part of this is because of the motivation that Mr. Trump has brought into this discussion. Also, the fact that I think there were certain things that the mayor said that were inaccurate. If you look at at immigration to the United States in the early 20th century, whether it was Jews, Italians, right, other groups, crime actually did go up. They were blamed for everything. They were blamed, they brought Cosa Nostra. They were blamed for all of these kinds of things. But when we want to sanitize our historical memory,
that's right. I mean, history changes over time, and we shut down immigration.
We say, they were just here to work hard.
Well,
and I'm sure
it's all complicated. But what's not complicated is that our closest ally in the region, our biggest recipient of American aid, built this wall, and the same people who supported building that wall, I'm one of them who supported it, are now telling us that an effort to protect our southern border in exactly the same way is, quote, immoral and racist. And I'm just wondering, what is the standard?
Well, when you're going around and you're saying that the people from our South are rapists and that they commit crimes when you actually don't have any empirical evidence to back it up, it sounds pretty much like it's xenophobic and racist.
You don't like Trump. Which is
it's not about
totally
Trump.
Fine, but how about just
I have no feelings about Trump.
How about just taking Trump out of it? His motives, what he says. A lot of people would like a wall on our border, and they're confused because they hear Pelosi and Schumer say, "Well, a fence is fine, but a wall is immoral." What is the distinction exactly?
Well, I think again that the fence is not. Even a fence is not necessarily what is going to lead to border security. And I think you and I actually agree. I read your book, which is actually a fabulous book. But
thank you.
I will tell you, when I read your book, the problems that exist with immigration, and I think Mike Pence actually has it correct, actually start in Central America. It's not at our border. So if we want to solve this problem, and if we're trying to stop, the things that the right talks about, the flow of drugs,
right.
One of the things that many experts say is that a wall or fence or any of that is not going to stop that. They're going to fly drones. They're going to find other ways
then why
around
did it work in Israel? I mean,
we need to help.
We need to help them get better, those countries.
Within their borders, people oftentimes don't really want to be here. That's the other thing.
Well, so I guess, there are a couple of things, but I'll just focus on one. So, lots of people have tried to make Honduras a better country, a lot of great Hondurans. But the country itself, beginning with the government, is dysfunctional, okay? That's why Hondurans and Guatemalans want to move here. So what would be the plan for fixing those countries to the point where they would have such a high standard of living and be so peaceful that people wouldn't want to leave? Is there a secret formula that none of us know?
I think, the reason that it's dysfunctional, and again, having read your book, is U.S. intervention that happened throughout the late 70s and early 80s.
So you're saying that Guatemala and Honduras weren't dysfunctional before the United States for reasons that are unclear?
I would say that the thing that brought people to our borders and that has caused both documented and undocumented immigration that has driven that has been the wars that we have created that have cost thousands upon thousands of lives.
Well, we didn't. I'm against most foreign intervention, incling there. I agree with you there. But we didn't create those wars. Of course, we intervened in them because we thought it was in our interest.
We propped up the Contras.
We may have. We certainly did, but we didn't create the Sandinista Marxist revolution that enslaved the country of Nicaragua, of course.
Well,
but really quick, my question is. So what does that mean now? Does it mean that because we feel so bad about something that our leaders did 30 years ago, we have to pay the penance of illegal immigration? Does it mean we have an obligation to fix those countries? If so, how do we do that?
I think, investment and partnership with democratically elected leaders in those countries.
Where's that worked? Anywhere ever?
Has
that ever worked? Because we spend all this money abroad, and it seems to just make the countries more corrupt and the average person poorer and more desperate to come here. Has it ever worked?
Well, I think that there are certainly ways that we can do this where it would work. And we've always had the goal of colonizing a place when we actually try to help them. And I think the best bet is to go enter into partnerships with democratic.
So how about this one? Since we're in the reparations business, and boy, I'm open-minded about everything, as you know. But if we owe Latin America something, what if they flooded our communities with drugs and killed, 50,000, 70,000 people a year?
Wouldn't equal the amount of people we killed there.
I don't think that's right, actually. A year. So more people die of drug ODs in this country every year than died in all of Vietnam Americans over 11 years. So what do they owe us? Anything?
So again, we're going to disagree about
I'm just wondering if it's a two-way street. I mean, can we collect for the fentanyl epidemic? It seems like we should.
Yeah, well, again, I think that the fentanyl epidemic has many different layers to it. It's not just coming from Central America.
No, it's a lot of it's coming from China, but a lot of it's moving through Mexico. So I'm just wondering, what does Mexico owe us for killing tens of thousands of
again,
citizens?
we were talking about Central America. We were talking about Mexicans.
Sure.
Oh, they're all the same? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. We've learned recently that nobody dislikes Central Americans more than the people of Mexico. I actually like Central Americans. The average citizen in Tijuana does not feel that way, not as open-minded as I am. I would say that. Professor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tucker.